fire, and greed. Carl worked in a metal shop in California. He earned just enough to get by, but his real dream was to own a farm with Belgian horses. The problem was money. A farm cost $200,000, and saving would take 30 years. Then a dark idea caught fire in his mind. If his wife, Christina, wasn't there, he could collect her life insurance.
Get by. To manage to survive or live with difficulty, especially with limited money. For example, we don't earn much, but we get by. Caught fire. Idiom. To become exciting, intense, or to spread rapidly. Here it means an idea began to grow strongly in his mind. Literal meaning, to start burning. Figurative meaning, to become passionate or obsessive about something. For example, the protest movement caught fire across the country. Earn, to receive money in exchange for work. Example, she earns $50,000 a year. Dream, a strong wish or goal for the future. Example, his dream was to become a doctor.
Collect, to receive or obtain money, especially insurance payments. Example, he collected the insurance money after the accident. Life insurance, a financial product that pays money to beneficiaries when the insured person dies. Example, she bought life insurance to protect her family. In 1991, Carl secretly bought a $200,000 life insurance policy on Christina and kept it under wraps. One night, while she was taking a bath, he blocked the bathroom door with a heavy cabinet. Then he poured kerosene in the hallway and lit it. The fire took off quickly, secretly, in a hidden way, without others knowing. For example, he secretly planned the surprise party. Life insurance policy, a contract with an insurance company that pays money when someone dies. For example, he bought a life insurance policy worth $500,000. Kept it under wraps. Idiom, to keep something secret or hidden. For example, they kept the new product under wraps until the launch. Blocked, to prevent movement or access by placing an obstacle. For example, a fallen tree blocked the road. Cabinet, a piece of furniture with shelves or drawers for storage. Example, she keeps dishes in the kitchen cabinet. Poured, to make a liquid flow from a container. Example, he poured water into the glass. Kerosene, a flammable liquid fuel used for heating and lamps. For example, they used kerosene for the camping stove. Hallway, a corridor or passage in a building. For example, the bedrooms are down the hallway. Lit it, meaning set it on fire, ignited it. For example, she lit the candles on the birthday cake. Took off, meaning an idiom, spread or started very quickly and powerfully. For example, the rumor took off on social media.
Carl pretended to try saving her, but Christina was trapped. She died in the flames. The investigation called it an accident. Carl breathed a sigh of relief. 4 days later, before her funeral, he moved to New York with $200,000 in his bank account. 10 years passed. Carl remarried a woman named Cindy and finally bought his dream farm in 2001. He raised beautiful Belgian horses and felt truly alive. Pretended. Acted as if something was true when it was not. Faked. For example, he pretended to be sick to avoid work. Trapped. Unable to escape or move. Caught in a dangerous situation. For example, the miners were trapped underground after the cave-in. Flames. The visible, burning part of a fire. For example, the house was engulfed in flames. Investigation. An official examination to discover facts about an incident. For example, the police started an investigation into the robbery. Breathed a sigh of relief. Idiom. To feel suddenly relaxed after being worried or stressed. For example, she breathed a sigh of relief when she passed the exam. Funeral. A ceremony held after someone's death, usually before burial. For example, many people attended his grandfather's funeral. Remarried means married again after a divorce or death of a spouse. For example, he remarried 3 years after his wife passed away. Dream, as an adjective, ideal, exactly what someone has always wanted. For example, she finally got her dream job. Raised, bred and cared for animals, brought up. For example, they raised cattle on their ranch. Belgian horses are a breed of large, strong draft horses from Belgium. For example, Belgian horses are known for their strength and gentle nature. Felt truly alive is an idiom. Experienced deep happiness and fulfillment. Felt fully engaged with life. For example, after quitting his desk job, he felt truly alive, working outdoors. But by 2002, money problems returned. The horses weren't profitable. Carl had insured them for thousands of dollars each. One night, he set his own barn on fire. 3 horses died. Insurance paid out $115,000. Profitable, making a financial gain or profit, earning more money than is spent. For example, the business became profitable after 2 years. Insured, protected by an insurance policy, covered financially against loss or damage. For example, he insured his car for $50,000. Barn, a large farm building used for storing crops or housing animals. For example, the farmer
kept his cows in the barn during winter. Set something on fire. Deliberately caused something to burn. Ignited intentionally. For example, the arsonist set the building on fire. Insurance. A system where a company provides financial protection against loss or damage. For example, car insurance is required by law in most states. Paid out. Phrasal verb. Gave money as compensation or settlement from an insurance claim. For example, the insurance company paid out $200,000 after the accident. Cindy eventually grew suspicious. She found life insurance documents. Carl had taken out $1.2 million on her without telling her. She hired a private detective who uncovered the pattern. Fires, deaths, insurance payouts. Eventually, after a period of time, finally, he eventually found the keys under the sofa. Grew suspicious. Gradually became doubtful or distrustful. Started to suspect something wrong. She grew suspicious when he kept lying about his whereabouts. Documents. Official papers containing important information. He signed the legal documents at the lawyer's office. Taken out is a phrasal verb, obtained or purchased, in this context, an insurance policy. For example, she took out a loan to buy a new car. Without telling her is without informing her, keeping her unaware. For example, he left without telling anyone where he was going. Hired is employed someone to do a specific job, usually by paying them. For example, they hired a plumber to fix the leak. Private detective. A professional investigator hired by individuals, not police, to gather information. Example, she hired a private detective to find her missing brother. Uncovered. Discovered or revealed something hidden or secret. Example, the journalist uncovered evidence of corruption. Pattern is a repeated or regular way of behaving or series of events. Example, police noticed a pattern in the burglaries. All happened on Tuesdays. Payouts are payments made, especially by an insurance company, as compensation. Example, the victims received insurance payouts after the flood. Cindy went to the police. They set up a sting. She wore a recording device and met Carl at a restaurant. When she asked about Christina's death, Carl confessed. Christina was an accident that had to happen. I needed that $200,000. Went to the police. Reported information or sought help from law enforcement authorities. For example, after the theft, she went to the police to file a report. Set up a sting. Idiom. Organized a secret operation to catch someone committing a crime, often using undercover tactics or deception. For example, The FBI set up a sting to catch the drug dealers. Wore. Had on one's body. In this context, carried on her person. For example, she wore a jacket because it was cold. Recording device. Equipment that captures audio or video for later playback. For example, the journalist used a recording device to document the interview. Confessed. Admitted to doing something wrong or illegal. For example, he confessed to stealing the money. Accident. In this context, ironic or euphemistic use. An unplanned event. Here, Carl falsely frames a deliberate act as unintended. For example, the car crash was a terrible accident. Had to happen. Was necessary or unavoidable, in Carl's twisted justification. For example, the change had to happen for the company to survive. Needed, required, had a strong necessity for. For example, I needed money to pay the rent. $200,000. $200,000, the insurance payout amount. For example, the house was worth $200,000. The next day, police arrested Carl at his farm. At trial, his own children turned away from him. Christina's sister attended every day, watching silently. Carl made a deal with the court and pleaded guilty. He was sentenced to 15 years in prison. His dream of horses had turned him into a killer. Arrested. Took into custody by legal authority. Detained by police for alleged criminal activity. For example, the police arrested the suspect at his home. Farm. A piece of land used for growing crops or raising animals. For example, they lived on a small farm in the countryside. Trial. A formal legal proceeding where evidence is presented and a judgment is made. For example, the murder trial lasted 3 weeks. Turned away from, rejected, distanced themselves emotionally or physically from someone. For example, after his betrayal, his friends turned away from him. Attended, was present at, came to be at an event. For example, she attended every meeting without fail. Silently, without speaking, in silence. For example, he watched silently as the scene unfolded. Made a deal. Negotiated an agreement, often in legal contexts, to reduce charges or sentencing in exchange for a guilty plea. For example, the defendant made a deal with prosecutors to avoid a longer sentence. Prison, a facility where convicted criminals are confined. For example, he will spend the next decade in prison. Turned him into, transformed or changed him into, caused him to become. For example, greed turned him into a monster. Killer, a person who murders someone. For example, the detective was hunting a serial killer.